A resort in southern China under lockdown after a staff member tested positive for the CCP virus. And in western China, a video claims a hospital cleared out patients after one of them was found to have a fever. Snowfall blanketed crops, a rare occurrence for this time of year. Heavy snow has been added to the list of disasters China's agriculture has endured in 2020. And Hong Kong's fight for freedom has spread outside the city. Now Canada is joining in. That's after Beijing warned the country not to grant political asylum to Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. First, we turn to the CCP or Chinese Communist Party virus situation in China's southern Guangzhou city. A resort there was put under lockdown on Friday. This after a staff member tested positive for the CCP virus. Chinese media report he's asymptomatic and has been living in a resort staff dorm. Local authorities said they would test residents at nearby resorts and other areas for the virus. A video circulating online claims people are already lining up for testing. A business owner living inside the resort told NTD's sister media, the Epoch Times, that those inside the resort have to be granted permission to leave. Now we turn to a suspected virus case in western China. A Chinese internet user posted a video on social media. He claims it was filmed at a hospital in China's Sichuan province. In it, a man with a Sichuan accent explains the hospital is clearing out all patients in a radiology department. That's after one patient was found to have a fever. He didn't clarify whether the patient was confirmed to have the CCP virus. The video is now circulating among locals. Some also claim the fever patient is from eastern port city of Qingdao, where authorities are conducting mass testing after a jump in virus cases. The hospital later came out to debunk the claim, dismissing it as a rumor. The hospital did admit to taking in a patient from Qingdao, but said the man tested negative for the virus. The hospital didn't clarify whether it cleared out patients from the radiology department. NTD cannot independently verify the information in the video. But the Chinese regime has been known to dismiss whistleblower reports about the virus in recent months. The biggest example being the 8 doctors in China who first tried to sound the alarm about the CCP virus. They were punished by Chinese authorities and criticized for what the regime labeled spreading rumors. Now we look to northern China, where snowfall blanketed one region's crops, destroying them. The unseasonably cold weather is rare for this time of year, and heavy snow has been added to the list of natural disasters China and its agriculture have endured in 2020.
A video shared online showed heavy snowfall in Jiamusi City inside Heilongjiang Province. Snowfall is virtually unheard of in the area during mid-October. It came just days before the region's rice fields would be harvested. The snow crushed the crops, and now farmers are scrambling to salvage what's left. In the video, a woman expresses her heartbreak over now destroyed rice crops. She explained that she had only harvested part of the crop before the snow. The rest was lost. Heilongjiang is China's largest food production province, and this year it suffered several natural disasters. In spring, it was the CCP virus outbreak, with lockdowns slowing down production. Then in June, some areas endured a severe locust surge. The insects are known for decimating agriculture. And in the last 2 months, the province was struck by 3 typhoons. The region's main crops, corn and rice, were drenched during the storm. Prior to this year, typhoons were rare for the area. According to data from provincial authorities, heavy rains and typhoons caused around $400 million in losses as of late September.
Hong Kong media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai said police raided his private offices on Thursday. This comes months after his arrest under the national security law imposed on Hong Kong by Beijing.
Jimmy Lais said he doesn't know why his office was raided.
Their intention is, they just want to, whatever they want to, they want to correct, they want to just get something to go against me. I don't know what it is.
The raid came hours before Lai's court appearance on Thursday. He faces illegal assembly charges for attending a now banned candlelight vigil. The event was held to mark the anniversary of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. The vigil is held annually, but police stopped it this year, citing virus concerns.
What can I say? Yeah. You know, the police didn't even wait for the lawyers to come before they took everything away. So that's not the rule of law. Yeah. And they did not leave.
Lais is the founder of pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily in Hong Kong. Police stormed the newsroom after his arrest in August. According to Bloomberg, shares of his stock soared by over 1,000% following the arrest. His aide confirmed the raid on Twitter, saying 14 police officers showed up and seized documents.
But Hong Kong's fight has spread outside the city too. Now Canada is joining in. Beijing has warned Canada not to grant political asylum to Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. China labels them as criminals, saying that if Canada were to take them in, Beijing would consider it an act of interfering within internal affairs. On Thursday, China's ambassador to Canada, Cong Pei-wu, urged Canadian officials to support China's crackdown, saying if the Canadian side really cares about the stability and the prosperity in Hong Kong and really cares about the good health and safety of those 300,000 Canadian passport holders in Hong Kong and the large number of Canadian companies operating in Hong Kong, SAR Special Administrative Region, Canada should support those efforts to fight violent crimes. But Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, called the Chinese ambassador's message totally unacceptable and disturbing. Champagne explained that he's instructed Global Affairs to call the ambassador in. He said that's to make clear in no uncertain terms that Canada will always stand up for human rights and the rights of Canadians around the world. New research reveals hundreds of thousands of Uyghur children in Chinese-ruled Xinjiang region have either one or both parents detained. International magazine The Economist unveiled its latest cover, called Torment of the Uyghurs. According to new data by a senior fellow in China Studies at Victims of Communism Foundation, Adrian Zenz, children of double-detained parents end up in orphanages or boarding schools. He found that between 2017 and 2019, Xinjiang added 380,000 new boarding students. That's an almost 80% increase in that two-year period. In one county alone, over 10,000 Uyghur children experienced hardship due to having at least one parent detained. 1,000 of those had both parents detained. That's according to local government data. In 2018, the Chinese regime admitted there were so-called vocational education and training centers in the region. The regime recently released a report saying it provided training to nearly 1.3 million Uyghurs annually since 2014. It said it was to help them find jobs. It's an indirect confirmation of the size of the camps. And now to Tibet. The U.S. appointed a senior U.S. human rights official as the special coordinator for Tibetan issues on Wednesday. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that Robert Destro would assume the additional post. Destro currently serves as Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. The post he's set to assume has been vacant since 2017. Pompeo said in a statement that Destro will lead U.S. efforts to promote dialogue between the People's Republic of China and the Dalai Lama or his representatives, protect the unique religious, cultural, and linguistic identity of Tibetans, and press for their human rights to be respected. China has refused to deal with the U.S. coordinator, labeling it as Western interference in its internal affairs. The move comes at a time when U.S.-China relations have sunk to their lowest point in decades. They've deteriorated over issues like trade, Taiwan, human rights, the South China Sea, and the CCP virus. China seized control of Tibet in 1950 in what the regime describes as a peaceful liberation. But the exiled spiritual leader of Tibet, the Dalai Lama, says Beijing's rule amounts to cultural genocide. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos warned about the Chinese Communist Party's influence in the U.S. education system. They wrote an open letter to state education commissioners. The letter warned about the potential harm of Confucius Institute at U.S. campuses, calling it part of the Chinese regime's global influence campaign. They said it impacts tens of thousands of U.S. school children every day, adding the presence of an authoritarian slant in education has never been more concerning or more consequential. Participants in Confucius classrooms said that the programs hinder academic freedom. U.S. officials warned that educators may not be aware of the institution's ties to Beijing's Ministry of Education. The Confucius Institutes have been coming under increased scrutiny recently. Funded by the Chinese regime, Confucius Institutes have been labeled as propaganda arms of the CCP, especially by the U.S. and U.K. Several other countries have already banned Confucius classrooms. Explora for children's smartwatches can be used for spying. That's according to a mnemonic, a Norwegian security firm. Access can be obtained to remotely record audio, take pictures, and use GPS locations. Explora say the problem was an outdated firmware issue, but mnemonics say it shouldn't have existed in the first place.
A new report says the Explorer 4 children's smartwatch can be used for spying. 365,000 of these smartwatches have been sold globally. The report found a host can take control of the phone by sending it an encrypted SMS message. It can then secretly take pictures, record audio, and even track the location of the wearer. Norwegian security firm Mnemonic uncovered the risk. The watch manufacturer told us they fixed the problem by updating the watch's software. But Mnemonic says that that's irrelevant. It says, this ability to issue wiretaps or take secret pictures over SMS is not a software vulnerability, a misconfiguration, or an oversight in using outdated protocols. This functionality has been created with intent. What's even more worrying is the watch manufacturer has links to a company in the US entity list. Chiho 360 is blacklisted as a national security risk. Mnemonics say the code was developed by Chiho 360. It also said the phone communicated with servers in China during their testing. An Explorer spokesman said that the watch just communicated once with the Chinese server, the first time it was turned on. It says any private data on the device would only go to its server in Germany, not China. Patrick Hayden, NTD.
A Taiwanese businessman has served as the middleman helping Hunter Biden build business connections with Chinese state-owned companies. That's according to an exclusive article by Hong Kong's pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily.
For years, 57-year-old Michael Lin and his Boston-based investment advisory firm Thornton Group have been arranging meetings between U.S. officials and people like Hunter Biden and Chinese state-owned company executives. According to Thornton's official website, in April 2010, the company arranged Hunter Biden, whose father was the vice president at the time, to visit multiple financial institutes owned by the Chinese regime. Hong Kong media outlet Apple Daily reports that many of them later became business partners of Hunter Biden in China. The report says that according to an exclusively seen records of a U.S. Secret Service, Hunter Biden visited China at least 6 times during the 8 years when his father was the U.S. vice president, and all the trips involved Lin as a middleman. In 2012, Hunter's advisory firm Seneca Global Advisories facilitated a deal that became the largest venture capital investment into the U.S. that year. Hunter's client, U.S. energy startup Great Point, received a $1.25 billion investment from Chinese multinational conglomerate Wanxiang Group. According to the Hong Kong media's report, Great Point had less than 30 employees at the time, while the Chinese company is one with strong capital and close ties to the Chinese Communist regime's foreign ministry. According to a Chinese media report, the deal was signed at a business forum in Los Angeles on February 17, 2012. The attendees of the forum include Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping, who was visiting the U.S. at the time and made a speech at the forum's opening ceremony. Xi Jinping praised the Chinese investor Wanxiang in his speech. A year later, the Taiwanese man's Thornton Group co-funded a private investment fund called BHR Partners, together with Hunter Biden and 2 Chinese asset managers. Affiliates of the firm said they planned to raise $1.5 billion. Biden served on the board of directors of BHR since 2015 and resigned last October. His lawyer said he did not receive any compensation from the position. In 2017, Hunter Biden bought 10% of the company for about $430,000. According to a Chinese media report, the Taiwanese businessman met with Joe Biden in late 2017 when Biden was on his America Promise tour. Michael Lin also served as the Asia chapter president of the U.S. organization State Legislative Leaders Foundation. The foundation's board of directors consists of up to 45 state legislative leaders. Its advisory panel is made of representatives from multinational corporations. Since 2007, Lin and his Thornton Group has arranged for U.S. legislators to meet with senior Communist Party officials, as well as officials from Taiwan's pro-Beijing Kuomintang Party. When Hunter Biden visited Taiwan in 2011, Lin and Biden attended a reception dinner arranged by a Beijing-friendly Taiwanese trade association. Also at the dinner was the daughter of former Taiwanese Vice President Wu Dunyi. Wu served as the president of the pro-Beijing Kuomintang Party until earlier this year. Apple Daily cited an unnamed source saying that Lin is currently in Beijing and has been restricted from leaving mainland China because of financial disputes. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani says he spent 3 weeks authenticating the Hunter Biden materials. They're from a copy of a hard drive that allegedly belonged to Democratic nominee Joe Biden's son.
Rudy Giuliani told the Epoch Times that he and his attorney have authenticated materials from the Hunter Biden data trove. He said they checked for some of the written notes against samples of Hunter Biden's handwriting. They matched details about undisclosed meetings with confidential information they already had from other sources. They also verified email addresses, among other things. Giuliani's attorney, Robert Costello, allegedly received a copy of the hard drive in August. It came from the owner of a Mac repair shop in Wilmington, Delaware. Giuliani got it 3 weeks ago. The Mac store owner also gave Costello a copy of an alleged subpoena for the laptop. It was dated December 2019. The FBI allegedly used it to seize the laptop the same month. The FBI declined to confirm the news. Hunter Biden's lawyer didn't respond to a request for comment. Giuliani says he's convinced that the materials are authentic, but he isn't ruling out that the shop owner is lying, and someone other than Hunter Biden could have brought it in.
It's only 18 days to the U.S. 2020 presidential election, and already October has been eventful. President Trump contracted and recovered from the CCP virus, and even more emails are to be revealed about Joe Biden's son's alleged business ties with China and Ukraine. Among the uncertainties of the future, today we will discuss what's certain: the two candidates' past stances on China. The U.S. has few foreign relationships more significant than its diplomacy with China. Today, we examine whether two U.S. presidential candidates stand on different issues related to China. Until recently, former Vice President Joe Biden's China policy seemed to stand for what's called the Washington Bipartisan Consensus. The strategy involves quiet engages with Chinese officials, bringing China into the international system and fostering its economy. In doing this, the belief is that China will naturally become more democratic and responsible on the global stage.
We're not trying to slow down Chinese growth. The growth of China is overwhelmingly in our interest.
But that view is changing as the world begins to recognize that the engagement policy has failed. China exploited its access to the global market, ignored the rules, and shifted the game so it only benefits Beijing. Then, Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping came to power. He put an end to the hide your strength, bide your time philosophy embraced by previous communist leaders. It was then that the world began to remember the communist regime's authoritarian nature.
And I spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader had by the time we left office. This is a guy who doesn't have a democratic with a small d bone in his body. This is a guy who is a thug who...
Before being elected, President Trump's TV career often featured comments on China.
I said that China is taking advantage and abusing us. They are manipulating their currencies. They are taking all and I don't mean like a little bit. They are taking tremendous numbers of our jobs. They're making our products. We are rebuilding China.
First, we turn to trade. According to Trump, imposing tariffs would be the only way to bring China to the negotiating table. After Trump's inauguration, he did just that. He slapped tariffs on the country that covers roughly 3/4 of all Chinese exports to the U.S. It marked the start of the U.S.-China trade war. The Federal Reserve estimated that because of the tariffs, the United States' need for Chinese goods has dropped by 1/3. Trump reached a Phase 1 trade deal with Beijing earlier this year. In it, China pledged to increase purchases of U.S. goods and services, though it was criticized by some for leaving subsidies for state-owned companies and intellectual property theft unaddressed. The Biden campaign has repeatedly condemned Trump's trade war with China, calling it self-defeating. A Federal Reserve report shows U.S. manufacturing has suffered due to rising input costs and China's retaliatory tariffs.
You lost that trade war. You lost it.
Lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it.
The Biden campaign has not publicly committed to repealing all of Trump's tariffs. The former vice president says he'll use a different approach to take on Beijing.
The way China will respond is when we gather the rest of the world that in fact believes in open trade.
Turning to when the pandemic first struck the world, Trump originally praised Xi Jinping for working hard to contain the virus. But his tone changed when infection cases began to appear in the U.S.
We must hold accountable the nation which unleashed this plague onto the world, China.
China will pay a big price for what they did to the world and to us.
The Biden campaign denounced Trump for taking China's word for it at the start of the outbreak. Biden said if he's elected, he would send U.S. CDC experts back to China and cooperate with Beijing on pandemic response. Biden also vowed to immediately rejoin the World Health Organization. That, says Trump, accuses the organization of conspiring with the Chinese regime to cover up the severity of the outbreak. Now we look to the candidates' approaches to China's human rights abuses. In the lead up to the November election, Biden has repeatedly criticized Beijing's aggression toward Hong Kong, as well as to ethnic minorities in China's autonomous Xinjiang region.
China is an authoritarian dictatorship. That's what it is. They have 1 million Uyghurs, 1 million Muslims in prison camps in the West. You see what's happening in Hong Kong today.
President Trump doesn't often address China's human rights abuses publicly. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book suggested that the president refuses to speak up about Hong Kong for fear of damaging the trade deal with China. Trump signed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act this past summer, one day before it automatically went into effect. He also commented on the arrest of pro-democracy Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai.
But I feel badly for him because I hear he's a good person. I don't know him, but I hear he's a good person, obviously a very brave person.
The Trump administration sanctioned several Hong Kong and Beijing officials for their role in suppressing the city's pro-democracy protesters. That includes Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam. Trump also sanctioned a dozen Chinese companies and several senior officials responsible for the crackdown on China's Uyghur ethnic group, the region's Communist Party chief among them. And almost all senior-level officials in his administration have harshly condemned the region's human rights abuses. As for Taiwan, in 2016, Trump broke a decades-long U.S. diplomatic tradition. He called Taiwan's president to congratulate her on winning the election. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar's trip became the highest-profile U.S. official ever to visit the island. Some suspect that the U.S. and Taiwan could soon start economic talks. Biden hasn't talked much about Taiwan so far, but his top foreign policy advisor said in a May interview that he hoped the U.S. could remain balanced in its relationship with China and Taiwan. And in the controversial South China Sea, the Trump administration officially rejects China's territory claim in the South China Sea. It sanctioned dozens of Chinese state-owned companies for their roles in building man-made islands in the region for China's military. The administration has also stepped up U.S. military activities there to prevent Beijing from solidifying its claim to the region. Biden has spoken in broad terms about countering China in the region, but has not offered details about his strategy. The same holds true for Biden's stance on China's technology theft and political influence. Trump administration officials have recently stepped up their crackdown on Beijing's scientific and industrial espionage campaign,
where the FBI is opening a new China-related counterintelligence case about every 10 hours. Of the nearly 5,000 active FBI counterintelligence cases currently underway across the country, almost half are all related to China.
The administration has also tightened scrutiny against both the Chinese regime's so-called United Front campaign, used to infiltrate and gain influence in U.S. politics, and its propaganda machine, broadcasted by its state-owned media operating in the U.S. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you next time.